Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Spurs from the Stands. I'm Sarah, and today we have a very important week up ahead of us, being the last final game in that Champions League stage, which is against Frankfurt this Wednesday. We've put the Premier League behind us, or so we thought, and we're going to talk a little bit today about perhaps something that has been missed in terms of the, I guess, media noise and turmoil that's going on about our manager. And before I dive into this, I recognize that this channel is very new. We're finding our feet. I continuously say this is progress, not perfection. And at times, I might say things which might be a little bit rambly, but I'm new to this, and I'm glad that there are those of you out there who are replying in the comments, because when I very first did the very first video I did a couple of weeks back, it wasn't on my bingo card this year to start a channel. But the reality was, in 2 weeks, I've had over 1,000 messages and more than 1,000 on X, on Instagram. And what has been happening behind the scenes and beyond what you guys can see on this channel is the amount of support that actually these conversations are having. Now, I've made it very clear where I stand on a lot of issues. I'm, not a flip-flop fan. I'm someone who's open-minded, who wants the best for my club, and I support my club in whatever they decide. Do I see our manager as being the answer to all of our future solutions? No, I don't. Do I accept that this is where the point that we are at right now? Yes, I do. And there were some comments yesterday in the chat, which I completely recognize are coming about because of the divisiveness of just the narratives that are going on in the press. And look, I don't want to draw too much attention on this, but before I dive into today's topic, I think it's very important that I just perhaps even share. I don't want to read all of this comment because some of it's quite frankly not relevant and it's a personal attack. And look, I've got my big girl pants on, okay? You might think that I'm soft, but it takes a certain type of person to come online and share their opinions. Whether this was planned or unplanned, I don't know where this is leading, but it clearly, we've had over 55,000 views, okay? We've had 750,000 impressions in 2 weeks. I have never heard anything like it. And so when some of you come on here and start attacking my character, I take issue with that, because I'm not someone who's going to stand by and ruin my reputation because I write my narrative. And so look, just to draw attention to, and this is to those of you in the chat who disagree, everyone is entitled to their opinion, okay? Discussions around football are opinion, they're not fact, okay? So for all of you out there who are saying I'm wrong, that's fair enough. But I think we also have to accept that there are other opinions aside from your own. And I keep reiterating the fact that there are different echo chambers. And I come with receipts. You guys know that if you've been sticking around since the beginning of starting this channel, in that video that I did breaking down why Frank is still in the hot seat, I came to you and I showed you the social media analytics which back up why Frank is still in the hot seat and why we've not seen any movement. And hey, you know what? It's true, because he's still in the hot seat. So you guys can come for me. You guys can believe whatever you're hearing on all of the news channels. But to be quite honest, what I am saying and bringing the receipts shows that this is not just my opinion. It is also at times analytical. And look, you don't have to like that. If you want to go back on other channels, just move on. There's no need to be spewing hate in the comments. That is not the type of community that I want to be building here. So I just want to flag that, someone brought up in the comments, and I'm not going to read all of it, but they said at the end, you sack off people who are more likely to go down into relegation than climb the ladder, and you make that decision before it occurs. Absolute stupidity to listen to people with your opinion. You're not a serious person. Leave with this. It was effing Burnley. So look, to you, Adam, who shared this beautiful comment, thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for coming on here and listening. And maybe one day when we go live, I'll invite you on and you can share your opinions. But in the meantime, maybe you can start your own channel and share your own opinions. Because look, I take on board the counter argument of the dire situation that we're in and the potential relegation battle that we could find ourselves in. However, none of that has transpired. And the speculation that we are going to get relegated is as equal and as valid at this point in time as it is that we have the potential to climb the league. Now, look, you might think that the mindset of the players, the tactics of Frank is not there. And that's valid too. Because from what we've seen, the evidence that has shown us, we are slipping down the table. But let's not jump to conclusions and write the narrative that we've already failed before we actually have. That's all I'm asking. For you guys to keep an open mind, to keep these conversations going so that we can eventually and hopefully move forward, rather than going through this cycle again and again and again, because look, we're all bored of it. We've all heard it before. It's the same conversation on every single channel you plug into. And, it takes a strong-minded person to stand up and be the person who's having a conversation around something different, to show a different side. And that doesn't mean I'm for or against. It just means I'm opening up conversations. So if you want to stick around for that, if that's something you're into, if you want to be part of a supporters unit, part of the collective, which is true fans who are supporting this club, regardless of your opinion, then you are most welcome here. But of course, if you want to attack characters, if you want to attack people in the comments, this platform, this channel is not for you. And look, if that's my downfall and it means that this channel is going to spiral as well, then so be it, because this is supposed to be a side project, and I don't know where this is going to take us, but I have to stand by my values. And Enoch might not have a backbone, but it's something that I have. So there you have it. Right. Rant over. On to today's topic of conversation. Breathe. I'm going to have a sip of tea. Still don't have the branding. But anyway, I do appreciate you all for being around, for sticking around, for keep returning, for sharing all your love in the comments. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't keep coming back. So please do share the love. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff, if it's something you're on board with. And I take no offense if it's not. So, something that got looked over and missed in all of the recent mayhem that we've been hearing about Frank in, Frank out. Now, this video is not a conversation about our manager being in or being out. It is a conversation about Frank, but it's not a conversation of whether he should be sacked or not. This is coming from the perspective of he is currently our manager, and we have a big game coming up on Wednesday. And the likelihood is at this point in time, he is going to be our manager. So before we talk about Frankfurt, and those conversations are going to come, and before we start arguing amongst the comments of whether he should stay or go, because I welcome you all, whether you're Frank in or Frank out, I want to just take a pause, and I want to take us back to the Dortmund game, which was last week, and have a little discussion about Frank's letter, which I believe is something that completely got missed from all of the mainstream news. Now, in the Dortmund Matchday program, Frank wrote a letter to the fans. And the letter, and I'm going to read it to you, it was about European nights. It was about standards, belief. It was about the connection between the team and the stands. Now, look, it didn't make the headlines. It didn't trend because, look, hope and belief doesn't sell papers. It doesn't sell papers. The news and the narratives are designed to create division. And it's only when you're on the inside of your club that you know what goes on. Look, we heard before Man United had their bounce. A lot of United fans were in this chat saying the same thing. I've seen the Brighton fans in the chat. I've seen West Ham fans in the chat. I've seen Wolves fans in the chat. There are many, many different teams that are going through a transitionary period. This is not just Spurs, but sometimes we need to look inward at ourselves rather than keep, trying to control things that are outside of our control. We can't control if the manager is going to come or go. That's not our decision to make. All that we can do as fans is get behind the team and support the team. So, look, maybe it's partly that entitlement that I've spoken about in the past, but I don't want to go down that road today. because I think this letter tells us a lot about where the club actually is right now and how this all fits into Wednesday and that game against Frankfurt, and potentially even how that Frankfurt game is going to play out. So this might not be one for everyone, but look, if you're here with an open mind, if you're here with just open to different perspectives and seeing things from a different angle, and look, if this is going to play out and Frank's going to be our manager until the end of the season and you want to get behind that, then look, I just want to share with you this piece. So Thomas Frank said, to lose any game is painful, but when it comes in injury time against a London rival, it is even harder to take. Saturday was a disappointment. We were not at our best in the first half against West Ham and went into the break behind, but the response after half-time showed the character and commitment that everyone at this club is demanding. We played with greater intensity and belief, and when Christian Romero scored the equaliser, I genuinely felt we were the team most likely to go on and win the game. Football can be cruel, and on this occasion, it was. There have been several matches recently where our performances have merited more than the results we have achieved. That does not change the reality that we are in a tough moment and must improve. But what I see every day is a group of players and staff who care deeply about this club, who are honest about where we are, and who are working relentlessly to close the gap between our current position and where we all want to be. As Vinay outlined in his letter, the ambition across the club is clear, and so is the determination to turn that ambition into action. From my perspective, that means demanding higher standards, continuing to develop our squad, and ensuring that every player gives everything to move us forward. We know results are what matter most, and we are all accountable for delivering them. Tonight gives us the opportunity to respond immediately, as our focus turns to the UEFA Champions League and the visit of Borussia Dortmund. They are a strong side with a proud European history and have been in excellent form domestically under Niko Kovac. It will be a serious test. These are the matches you come into football for. A European night under the lights against top opposition. With 2 league phase fixtures remaining, we are in a solid position in the Champions League table. We are unbeaten at home in the competition this season and are determined to continue that run as we push to qualify for the next stage. Your support has played a vital role in our performances here in Europe. Especially in moments like this, that connection between the team and the stands matters. Get behind the boys tonight. Your energy, belief, and backing can make the difference. And the reason why I think this message is so poignant is because it played out. And so it played out because last week when we played Dortmund, the fans showed up. And hey, guess what? We won a game. Now, I just watched a video on TalkSport with Majestic talking about, why around Thomas Frank. And the comments were all slagging off the pundits and things like that. So it's interesting that whenever the narrative gets switched, there's always people who are going to be arguing the opposition. That's just the name of the game. Football isn't a game if you don't have an opposition. So it's completely normal for people to come out and, oppose what you're saying. So we come to Burnley on the weekend off the back of that amazing win, arguably. I thought I could get away without hitting the light, but we're still in that period of year. But look, over the weekend, we saw Spurs go up in front, and then we saw them concede, and we saw the fans turn against the team. Sideways and backwards, Frank's going to get sacked, we're not going to get relegated. And look, I get the frustration of the fans. I completely get it. They've run out of patience, they've had enough. Not all fans, but a lot of fans. Booing the team, booing the manager, this whole noise surrounding the club is very, very toxic. And look, it's sad to see. It's testing times, because whether you want the manager to stay or you want the manager to go, the noise around this whole situation is not going to go, even if we have a new manager appointed. Because let me tell you this, our expectations as fans is so high that if we get a manager bounce and they win the first 2 games and then they go on a run and get defeated for the rest of the season, the expectation is always going to be, well, we thought you were going to do better than the last guy. Because hindsight's a beautiful thing. And as I've said before, we've romanticized about old managers and the situation getting better and sticking plasters over old wounds that really need open heart surgery. Sometimes you need to open something up, you need to stitch it back up rather than just smack a plaster on it to conceal the problem. And I've always said the manager is the scapegoat. And as Frank said in his letter, he spoke about building the squad. And unfortunately, until you bring in players, until you build this squad, you are still at the building of the foundations. You're never going to reap the rewards of the efforts that you put in, because you're not sowing the seeds. And so, look, it's a very tricky situation. But what I read from this message, Burnley aside and the reaction to that game aside, we have this game coming up, and it's a very important game for us because we know we have a hard run coming up and we've got to win that game against Frankfurt in order to get any fighting chance of beating any of the teams coming up. Historically, we have beat all Man United teams in the last couple of seasons. We are probably capable of beating Newcastle on our day. On our day, I'd bet us to beat Newcastle. Unfortunately, we're not at the races most days. But if you look at those 3 games and you say we have an equal chance of winning, that's how we start to make it up the table. And so I'm not saying, fall in love with Frank and fall in love with his tactics. I'm not saying that. I go to games. You guys have seen my Matchday vlogs. So I'm not saying that, disregard everything and the performance of the players. It's not good enough. They need to do better. But maybe it's going to take more time than we hoped to turn this ship around. Maybe we bring in a new manager and that does happen. But that's not our decision to make. So I think what got overlooked here is the Matchday program is an opportunity for players to tell their story. So in this Matchday program as well, I want to point out that Vicario also came out and told part of his story as well. So in every Matchday program, there is always timely news that is shared. Now we see Frank back to back in pressers and he looks drained. He looks exhausted. He's seeing, as Ali Gold says, they're seeing him like every other day and they don't want to see him any more than he wants to see them. And they said the same thing about Ange. So, there is a case to suggest that even as a manager, what you deliver in pressers can be very different to taking a moment to write a considered message in the Matchday program. Now, this to me signals that the club is very much behind Frank. I don't believe that this letter would have got published in the Matchday program if they had an intention of sacking him the next day. It just doesn't make sense because the week before, Vinay came out and had his say in the Matchday program. So you've got Vinay coming out, talking about backing the manager and he didn't explicitly back the manager, but they spoke about backing the club. And then we go and lose against West Ham. And then all of a sudden you've got Thomas Frank coming out and trying to create that unity in this message that so happens to get missed, coincidentally, goes under the radar, and then we happen to win the game. And then, of course, we bounce back, we lose again, and the whole cycle starts again. And you cannot progress like this. You can't progress. And if it means that Frank needs to go to get everyone back on side, maybe that is the way that the cards and the dominoes are going to fall. I can't give you that answer. But look, I wanted to share this letter with you guys today. What do you think about it? Do you think there's any weight to it? Do you think my points are valid? That the fact that, he's been able to have this published in a time where a lot of the external narrative is against him. Do you think that from this letter, actually internally, maybe they are more aligned than we think they are? Or is this just a piece of PR to try and get people on side and aligned with the club somehow? I don't know, but let me know your thoughts. We've got some exciting stuff coming up, so do stick around. I appreciate your patience as always. And we come together during tough times. That's what being a supporter is. That's how you overcome tough moments. And hopefully one day I come on here and we're talking about how amazing our club is and we're stuck for things to talk about because the division has gone and we're all united and we're all smiling and happy. And hopefully one day that is the case. Unfortunately, it's not quite today, but we're going to dive more into the Frankfurt game probably tomorrow, the injuries, updates, transfers, and all of that kind of stuff. So what do you guys think to this? Do you think the board is still backing Frank? Are you reading anything into this? Do you think it's just coincidence? Share your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you all in the next video.